Hello, friends, and welcome to the Real Life Conversations for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm your host, Teresa McCloy.
And I'm your co-host, Erica Vinson. We're so glad you're listening in. Here on the podcast each week, we want to have real conversations to help you grow a successful and sustainable coaching business and yet still stay connected to what truly matters.
We always want to share practical tools, honest stories, and our own experience as coaches, as well as inviting some great guests on the show to support you as you coach and learn to live from a place of rest, not rush.
So whether you're just getting started or you've been coaching for years, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's conversation.
So, Erica, the topic I want to talk about today is, do I always have to be working as a coach? And we're going to dive in a little bit to that mindset of feeling like I always have to be on, I always have to be thinking about my business, to even some really practical things about what can I watch for as signs that's what I'm doing, that's the behavior that I have, and even just practical ways to think about time, which is one of our favorite topics. So let's dive in a little bit and just even from a scriptural perspective, or what does the Bible have to say about time?
Psalm 90:12 says, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." So there is a stewardship there. There's an order about time that's important. And then there's this heart of wisdom that we're leaning into, not just our thoughts, which sometimes drive that I've got to be working all the time and we get sped up. But there's the heart that's connected, which also is part of embodying how we actually steward time.
So there's a quote, and the author is not really known, but I love this little kind of back and forth of this is busyness is not the same as fruitfulness. So when we think about being busy, I used to always say we wear it like a badge of honor, right? I think culture and society's gotten over that. We're seeing more and more about this idea that I don't want to live that way, and I actually don't even have to live that way. We were actually having a conversation today as a family around lunch. My daughter came in and my husband, and I had just finished, and we were talking about technology and just how phones keep us in this space and of just feeling maybe like we're always busy, but we're not really busy. We're not being fruitful, as we say. So I just want to ask you, Erica, when you started your coaching business, did you ever have that feeling, this need that I need to always be on, I need to always be thinking about my business?
Absolutely. I think that it's the trap. We get excited when we start something new. And then once you're in community, it's really about navigating community with a heart of wisdom, right? Go back to Proverbs, or excuse me, to Psalms. And so when you think about that, community can either speed us up when we're comparing. And so even in the early stages of coaching, where I'm in classes and community that we were even creating, you start to hear what other people are doing and you can get into that like should be. I should be making X number of contacts a week, or I should be building a website. And so those little things certainly could hook me early on in coaching.
I know they did for me as well, or I need to buy this program because that'll be the end all do all. It didn't align with who you were, but yet everybody was doing it. Everybody was getting certified in something doing, and we have our own certification
Yeah.
and we help coaches with all of these types of things at the Real Life process. But I always tell people discern, don't decide on something like this. Is this going to help you move forward? Is this going to help you with your time and feeling that you have what you need and you don't have to spend hours creating it for yourself? That's one of my passions when we put together the process is wow, a good coach like yourself could take this and just dive in with a client and not feel like I don't have enough. I need some more tools in my tool belt, that kind of thing. So I experienced all of those things too. I'm not enough. We were talking today, even on our community call, and heard from some of our coaches because some of them had some really big wins, some really big things to share of what they're doing with the process and materials and things they're launching. And they've had some success. And I
Okay.
just knew that there would be those on the call that would be like, oh, I need to do more. I need to hustle is the word.
Mm.
And there's some myths about that word. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that for a bit.
The word hustle itself already has a speed about it that kind of brings some angst. And so when you think about that new coach experience, or even I was on with a client this week that said, I'm beginning again, because it is a next season in life. And so new coaches, they can feel like I've always got to be networking. I need to be posting all the time. I've got to be selling. I've got to be coaching. And it's a grind that
Yeah.
sometimes when you go back again to that scripture, teach us and number our days, it's like there's a capacity about us that we're not called to be slothful and just go, oh, I'm just going to build this business and the floodgates are going to open and the Lord is going to bless what I'm doing. We get to participate with God. So there are steps we can take, but the constant hustle of I always have to be doing something, it is a false belief.
It is a false belief. And using even you and I as examples and how we show up in different spaces. You are not one. You can find Erica through the real life process. You can find Erica at her website, but she is not one to post anything on social or be on platforms in that nature. I, on the other hand, do that because of the company and the business that we have. That's how a lot of coaches find the work that we do. So it is important in the way I've structured my business. You do much more one-to-one coaching. And one of the ways that you meet new people and have your name in the marketplace in some of the work you like to do is actually the teaching that you do inside
Mm.
of a coaching school. She teaches at Professional Christian Coaching Institute, by the way. A little plug for them. I say all that to say, finding your unique voice
Mhm.
in how you're going to do this work takes some time.
Yeah.
You have a teacher background, so it's
Mhm.
pretty natural for you to go, wow, this is a space I enjoy, but it ties back to your business and
Mm.
it doesn't feel like hustle. And even what I do doesn't feel like hustle to me. We're not buying Facebook ads and doing all of that, but we're in the marketplace. I do a lot of free summits. I do create some of my own spaces for people to gather. So constant hustle is one thing, and it's not made up by hosting and coaching and selling all the time. Networking might be important. So
Mm.
it's finding your space in the work. I guess the last thing I would say there is, what are you saying in your head about the work
Mm.
you're doing? I am adamant about not calling it a side hustle and really identifying that I have a part-time business.
Yeah. I remember just even taking a step when I was building my business to actually have an LLC. It made me feel like I was a C-suite leader in my business. We talk about, and Kim Avery has a beautiful book on the prayer-powered entrepreneur as God as your CEO, but it put me in a leadership and ownership position of my business that was a huge mindset shift for me. And so some of those steps to working and building your business are necessary. How do you notice for yourself, Teresa, like when you've slipped into the unhealthy pace of stewardship or hustle for you?
There's some things that, and we can talk more about these practical, but one thing for me is deciding how much coaching, and I'm
Mm.
talking one-to-one right now. We also do group with our network, but how much you actually want to do per week. And then step 2 of that is, what would time of day would feel good for you, all of that. If it's getting outside of those boundaries, I can see that pretty immediately on my calendar. So one of the ways I control that is with a link to my booking. And then I rebook my private clients because that just helps with that. And I sometimes have to go back, and I will be honest to say I had this thought this morning. I do a lot of time managing my calendar
Mm.
in a pre-decision. I'm looking 2 to 3 weeks out. I just did it today to say, do I have enough time available? And because sometimes my book can, and do I want to give it up for some more
Mm.
open slots? But in the beginning, it was just deciding, is it 5 or 6? And what I would say, because somebody's listening in right now and going, Teresa, I don't even have enough clients for those slots. was my case for a long time. So then it's not finding different times to work on your business, but going, okay, I've got that set aside. Who do I want to reach out to? What can I do here during this time that was supposed to be client time, but isn't yet? I
Mhm.
do in my business.
I think one of the things you were talking about those thoughts, and I think one of those things for me, because I am more prone to the relational marketing approach you talked about, there are other ways. If you want to put yourself out there on social media, that's a beautiful way as well. For me, I can feel like, oh, I've done the work and I'm waiting on the clients. And that's not at all true. I can create opportunities to
Mhm.
connect with clients. And so I get to participate. Like God's working behind the scenes, but I get to participate in that and create conversations and connections. And so I'm not this victim waiting on, oh, I've done all the work. It's just not happening. So I get to create it.
And I think that's what I mean by that time. Take that to send an email or two out. Just short connection. You and I both do that. Onboarding of people into our program or private clients through just connection. Good old fashioned connection, whether that's
Yeah.
locally across a cup of coffee or in a Zoom room or even over the good old fashioned phone call. So let's talk about the reality of time because I think that can be the feeling if you're an entrepreneur is I need to be on 24/7 or this business will not grow or this business will not survive. And I can struggle with that as well. So I'm speaking to myself when I'm talking of these things. That was why for me, over the past year, I've really switched my language from time management to stewarding of time. When I wrote the book a few years ago, we call it real life time. And that chapter and all the things that we talk about with time are still reality, but I'm just shifting how I'm speaking about it. But stewardship in business is just different. It's aligning what our priorities are. So living from rest, not that comparison. So again, what are some practical ways that maybe you feel that shift when you think of it as stewarding your time rather than managing it?
Well, I think stewardship rather than managing, it feels like a gift that there's not necessarily an expectation, but I get to approach it with expectancy. I get to create something in this space. And it's tied, I think, to abundance for me in stewardship to go, I want to be generous, which goes back to our values. We talked about those so often in our areas of focus in the real life process, but really thinking about what do I want this business to look like? And so stewarding it means it's open handed. God is, as we said, the CEO, God's got a bigger plan here, but I get to partner with him in it. And it's not about my grinding it out, my striving, and it's not on my ability that it's either going to survive or not. I play a part in that, but I'm not solely responsible for the success. Yeah. What
And
about for you?
you've mentioned it a couple times. I don't want to miss that. Our good friend Kim Avery has a beautiful book, The Prayer Powered Entrepreneur. Check it out, look at it because it's just that devotional space of every day you can be in your business with God and walk through that prayer time and really think in a different way about your relationship to your business and
Mhm.
where God is in it. I think for me, it is that shift of what can I pre decide?
Mm.
A resource that we've done many times, I'm sure I have some podcasts about it, is if you have 20 hours a week or 15 hours, what are you going to do in that time? And there's some of the time you need to be spending with clients. There's some of the time you need to be in your own personal development. There's some of the time you need to be in connection and just dividing up that time, especially if you're in the beginning of your business. Now, as your business grows and you might be a year or so in, you're going to
Mhm.
see that shift. So I was in not one, but two masterminds, and I was doing this. And that made me feel busy and it felt purposeful. And I'm grateful for those things, but it was too much. It was out of balance in what I was spending working on my business and what I was spending working. I could redefine it and go, oh, this group is about relationships and networking. And yet, what was the ROI? What was the result
Mm.
of that? So that can make us feel busy, but it's not always good stewardship. So just really discern what percentages of that 20 hours or 40 hours or whatever that you've committed to in that space. Let's talk a little bit about some just practicals. What are maybe some signs that you've seen for you? We mentioned a few just earlier, but what are some signs that you think can come up when you're in that I am overworking and overthinking about my business all the time?
Well, I don't sleep as well, for certain. I think early on, after my divorce several years ago, I would wake up sometimes with my laptop in the bed with me. That was just a really not even a red flag, it was just a burning fire. This is not good. And so there was something about the independence there that was fun sometimes, that was a rush, but it was also like, this is not healthy.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore, but I'm just in confession.
Oh,
I'm
I've
in
been there.
recovery, so
Yeah, I've been there. In the beginning, if you are an entrepreneur or you've transitioned out of full time and now you're dabbling into coaching and you're building this practice as your second half of life, which we work with so many people, that's where they are. You can feel the sense of freedom of, I can do this anytime. And I've heard it over and over again. I love what I do. The invitation is to do it 24/7 or to sleep with our laptops. And we are both guilty of that happening. It's this multitask thing that comes up for us. And yet, number one, multitasking doesn't work. Our body's telling us we need to sleep, and yet we're pushing through. I'll just list a few others here. Resentment towards a
mhm.
session. Here, you wanted client sessions, you wanted a group coaching program, and now you're feeling a little bit of resentment instead of joy in the presence of the conversation. Maybe choosing to do something rather than being with your family or being with your church community. Before we hopped on the call, you were talking about going to a small group tonight and all
Mm.
of that. And I remember times, and this mirrors what we used to do in church ministry, where every evening was taken up with something. We have set boundaries in our business, and I'm sorry sometimes that it doesn't work for everyone, but we don't do evening things. About 5:30 is the latest we go, and that's only maybe one night a week when we're in a cohort and we're training, because we do wanna try to make it as convenient as we can. But we have people on our team that have kids, we have lives outside of this work, and that evening time is just precious to us. So if you're spending every evening, I just talked to a guy today that works a full-time job, and I'm like, what would it look like if you only did that on Mondays and Wednesdays? And that your family, he's in a family coaching business, and your family knew that Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, dad wasn't going to eat dinner and then go to the back room to be on his laptop the rest of the evening. Yeah, I think those are signs.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a trap that we probably as society fell deeper into even throughout COVID. We talked
Yeah,
about that
for
period of
sure.
time. But it was like we can serve people around the world. If you're working with someone even that's international from where you are, they have a different time zone. And we're going to keep talking about rhythms and boundaries here. But just because there's a need, you said it, doesn't mean you're the one to meet it always.
So let's give some practical of how we look at time. And this is straight out of the real life process playbook. If you listen to the podcast, you hear us reference this all the time. One of the ways that we talk about time and stewarding of time well is through four components, four words, I guess, that we introduce to say, look at your calendar really practically and say, do I have times where I am setting aside to be present to my own self care and soul care? There's some really practical things around that. Erica, what might that look like?
It can look like a lot of times we think quiet time in the morning. So it can certainly look like that. Present time could be going for a walk. It could be reading a book. It could be going to exercise, even a setting with others. But it's something that is soul care, self care for you, either just you and God or with you and someone else.
I put my doctor's appointments in present time. Anything I'm taking care of, I get my nails done, that's present time. A haircut, anything that is my own care of my body, care of myself. It's all kinds of different things, but it's present to yourself. And if you build it in this way, the work will come. But taking care of you and your relationship with God and with others
Mm.
before. So the second one is people blocks. And there are not very many programs out there that will actually tell you the people matter first. They might tell you your team matters or other things, but I am so grateful just of how we have set this aside and say no. It comes from some hard things and hard pain in my own story and different things that we won't go into, but just that realization that if I'm going to do what matters as I build this business, if I'm going to steward it well, the next block of time that I want to look at is relationship with others. So, what's that look like for you, Erica, as you think about that?
Yeah, people block could be reaching out to a friend or a family member to connect over the phone. So we look at it in many aspects, those long term, long distance friendships that have spanned seasons of your life. There may be work relationships, people in that sphere of coaching that you want to connect with. So a block of time to have a Zoom call or a connect to encourage one another, hear what's going on in a business. It could be deep relationships and friends that you're connecting with. What's the rhythm of that? Family. And so there's all different kinds of those people relationships. But yeah, practically, goodness,
Yeah.
coffee, sports, conversation, engaging any way that really delights your soul with someone who is, and this is key, life giving.
Life giving. That's what we always say. People block part because there might be people that need to be on your calendar, people that need to be off your calendar, all that kind of thing. And if you're building a business, you may have a season where you do need to give up some time with some certain people, or you step back from volunteering as much in something that you do. Doesn't mean it's forever. It could be for a season, though. The next one is project block. And this really is where the work is taking place. Now, you're going to have other things outside that are time you've designated for clients and for calls or group programs that you're doing. Project blocks are, what do I have going on in my business that is something in the next 90 days that I'm working on, that I have some actionable steps around, and I've blocked out. Example for me is I'm recording my book on Audible. Been out for almost 3 years in November. I want it to be in an Audible version. So I've gone into my calendar and set aside 90-minute blocks to record book. And I've gotten the technology almost set up to do that. I've met with my project manager who's going to be doing the editing. All those were steps. And now I'm down to this last step of just recording. So there's all kinds of things that you as a coach might have as a project, your onboarding process, your offboarding process, the technology you might need for the way you work in the business, a certification that you're doing could be a project. When people come through our certification, I know you always set them up and say, this is a
Mhm.
project for you for the next 90
Yeah. Yeah, it just is honoring the space for the work that you're doing.
Mm,
So when we don't honor that space, that's where the overwhelm starts.
mm.
Because we have to admit, we think, oh, I can just send that quick email. Well, it may take 15, 20 minutes to put together the email that you're putting together. And that's one of your action steps for a project, just to reach out. When we undervalue the action steps and the movement that we're making, we get overwhelmed.
And then the last part of is prep blocks. And this is really where people get caught the most. They spend more time in the doing of tasks, and tasks are necessary every day, email and calendar and running errands and doing all the things. But we spend way more time there and we don't have a beginning and an end. So just thinking about how you think about time, how you steward it through present to yourself, present to those that matter in your life, the people, mindful of blocking some time out for project type work, and then not spending all your time, having some end time around that. I always say a couple of those a day, an hour here and
Mhm.
an hour there, are plenty enough. Don't let yourself go down the rabbit trail of the emails that you then click on the website and read that and whatever. And it's not purposeful in where you need to be right now.
Yeah, that's so good. I think as we're starting out in coaching, or even if we're beginning again, it's like we can have opportunity overload. And all of those things are great. That's why we love the tool of a mind map, just to get them out there, write them down, name them. But it's about going, which one is the thing for now that I actually want to focus toward.
So I think being faithfully present, not in frantic productivity, a shift of energy just when you hear those two words. I want to be faithfully present to the work I'm doing and what God's called me to. I don't want to be in frantic productivity. We have a resource for you that I want to send you to, and it really ties to our book. So if you go to the reallifeprocess.com, we spell real life with one L. So the reallifeprocess.com, and then /book resources, you can actually download a sample guidebook that will have the time framework that I just walked you through in there. So if you are not familiar with it and you want to see it in print, it will have some other resources. Erica just mentioned the mind map and some other things, but book resources is where you want to go. There's some other things there you might find valuable, some links to podcast episodes, an actual video, a little documentary that we did when we launched the book that would give you more insight even into the process. And I do want to say, if you are a coach that says, wow, these frameworks that we share here on the podcast, I would love to have access to those. I would love to have access to this time process. I'd love to be able to share that with my clients and have some tools around that. You might check out our coach certification and click on get certified or just type in get certified after that slash. And you can find all that in the show notes and have a conversation with Erica or myself or one of our other team members just about what does it look like to have access to a lot of the things that we talk about here on the podcast. These are things we've talked about over and over for years. They're not new under the sun to us. And we see our coaches using them in the work they're doing and having great success and having wonderful tools with their clients.
Yeah. And we want to invite you as you're listening in to just consider, where might God be inviting you to steward your time differently this week? Permission to pause. I think Chick-fil-A has modeled that well in our fast-paced society, that it actually can multiply and there is abundance when we're willing to pause and rest. God modeled it, but if it's not good enough to read it there in the beginning in Genesis, Chick-fil-A is showing us in real life that it works. And so take a pause and just notice, how might you steward your time a little differently, and just see how God continues to bless you in your business.
So, friends, we just invite you to remember that every ordinary day has an extraordinary moment. You just have to look for them. But if we don't allow the space, we miss them. We miss them. That's why the stewarding of time is so important to me, that those moments are there. And I know that was the story in my own life. You miss them. You miss those moments when we're overdoing and always thinking we need to be working as a coach. Have a great week, and we'll be back next week.
See you soon, friends.